Dear friends, how remiss. I've been very busy and I haven't kept you posted. First thing is I finished the Epizoescope, that's right, that was the last video I posted, and got it sent off, and I'm really pleased to have heard from the customer this very morrow that she has finally received it, and you can see why it's so important to have the cushioning, the outer box and the inner box, because she took a photo and it arrived on her porch. You can see how battered the outer box is. That's double thickness corrugated cardboard, really tough. It's amazing what they put these through. So that's arrived, so that's lovely. I look forward to seeing photos of it in situ. During the meanwhile, back here, I've been getting on with making another 20 Nempnett Thrubwell kits because I'd realised I'd run out. I've made so many videos on that in the past that I didn't bother. I thought it wasn't worth this time. I have packaged up 6, I think, and then realised, look at the things that I could be getting on with. Here are all the bits of all the kits for the Nempnett Thrubwell Kitchen Timers, and there are the rest of the boxes with some of the bits put in, so I've yet to get those done. And when I started that, and then I thought, hang on, I've also run out of Heraldic Clarion door horns. So I've sprayed up some of those lovely vuvuzela horns. They are actually from a Spanish company. They are brilliant because they are beautifully made, really good quality, and you spray them with brass. And the best thing is they're special patented diaphragms they have that loads of horrible Chinese companies have copied. These are the proper patented ones from the people who came up with the idea. They work on these beautiful little air pumps. The ones that are used in blood pressure monitors and things. They don't shift a large volume of air, but I was so thrilled to find that they shifted enough to get the vuvuzelas working. I thought to me, Sen, wouldn't it be nice if you could have a doorbell that used the air horn and the little electric pump? And what I also love about it is there's no cheating, as with all my machines, well, most of them. I didn't want to cheat. You could have some digitally recorded sound. Nah, a real working air pump and air horn, that's great. So then I decided I'd design the Heraldic Clarion door horns, that's right. Now, I've made some of them. In fact, this much of them. Well, I'm making 6 more because that's the number I usually make. And these cabinets are basically the same for the Nempnett Thrubwells. They've got the same ends made of pine and the same sides, but just a different front to house, well, a little air filter based on that logo with the gears. An entry place position for the cable that you carry off to your existing doorbell switch. That's this beautiful rayon covered, but it looks just like copper braid. It's wonderful stuff. So that's that, and that exits from a couple more plumbing fittings. One of these estrogens. I think I've remembered the word correctly, I always forget it. But I've made a big effort. Estrogens. Now the way I get the air from the pump to the horn in these is I use a hole in a piece of wood that fits together like that. Now before I glue it in, from experience, I'm sure it says that somewhere, I'll drill a 4.5mm hole that's the right diameter for the air pump to push into the little thing on the end of it, spigot or whatever. So once I've glued it all together, this in fact, I can then drill a hole, a 7.5mm hole in the front into which the air input can push for the horn, and then the horn sits up something like that, held in place with of course the beautiful brass Munson rings that go there. So currently I've got the front glued on and screwed, and the back just screwed on because I need to get inside for the works. I've got the laser engravings done. I've got some lovely little brass pins, and I'm gluing and pinning on the front the labels. I have to say, I don't know why I've waited so long to make another video, because I'm really enjoying it. It's just not the same being in the workshop without my lovely group of viewers. It's as though I have lots and lots of company rather than just amusing myself. So there's 2 very small holes there to line up the pins for repeatability. Just going to put a couple of bits of super glue, and then hopefully you can see this and line up. It will probably go all wrong, because it usually does when I've got the camera on. That there. Tap, tappity tap. There we are. Bob's your uncle. Great, I'll get the other ones of those done. And then of course you glue one on, and you're pinning it on, get it all nice and level, and then find somehow you've got super glue on your fingers. You try and pick it off and break your nail, which I've glued back together with super glue, and that's ruined. I managed to chisel it off, you'd never know. So now I've got to try and glue that, thankfully, back on there. I think I need to engrave another one. I'm going to make it slightly wider to try and cover that. Oh, you're lulled into a false sense of security, and then it gets you. With these engravings, I'm using lots and lots of very small lines to make up the letters with a very fast cut, so it doesn't take much time to get things drawn. Because the alternative is to use the raster engraving, and these letters are big enough not to require that sort of detail, with the poor old lays having to go backwards and forwards hundreds, if not thousands of times across the piece of work. Pretty sparkly laser light. How exciting. Right, I'll get that cleaned up with isopropyl alcohol and we'll give it another go. Perhaps I should have cut out several just in case. Oh, can't let your guard down. That's a betterer. Lovely. Right, now to take the backs off them all. Let's number them so I know which one goes with which one in case of minor discrepancies, and then starting working on the innards. Now the first thing I want to do, and I've got the back off, is I want to check the angle of this hole. It says here to raise it up by whatever it is there, so then drill the hole for the horn thing to fit in, and then that means the horn lines up with the two Munson rings. So before I do that, because I've changed it and made some other notes, I vaguely remember last time needing to add some washers. So here are my Munson rings. There's the 32 I think and the 22, and I've worked out how high they need to be away from the base. I'm going to fix them on, and then I can just sort of judge the angle of the dangle. And one little top tip: when I was designing the Nempnett Thrubwell, this is how you normally fix Munson rings down, but there wasn't really room, and these bits are quite expensive, and I realised that it's much cheaper, well, slightly cheaper, to use M10 bolts. I'd forgotten that I need to reinforce these sides. I don't think it's necessary, but it's ever such fun gluing in little bits of wood with, as always, the super glue. I'm happy with that. That pushes in the awl, and that supports just sits nicely on the bottom of the two Munson rings without straining anything. I've used this unpainted one. Call me old-fashioned. The less chance I have of scratching the paint, the better. If only I'd read the instructions, because destructions. Because look, an extra washer there, and indeed, one extra washer there. It's perfect. I will go ahead and get all the other holes drilled. So the idea is that I drill in from the front to meet up with that hole for the pump. I'm going to try and do it from this side, which is a bit fiddly. 7.5 millimeters there, and I've set the depth so it should just break through into the other hole. Yep, that looks like it has. Give it the blow test. Hang on. Yeah, what I'll do is to just put a twist drill in there by hand to clear out any floof. Munson rings attached. Oh, and the other thing is, because now it's time to stick on the felt, I stick that on after I've drilled these holes, because sawdust, or like the proverbial to the shovel, if it comes into contact with felt, I can now glue that on. And I'm going to use, for this job, surprisingly, not glue of the super variety, but glue of the all-purpose something rather, clear glue by Bostik, which is a contact adhesive, but I'm just going to use it, a thin bead of it round. Great thing is it's rubber based or something like that, some nice smelly chemicals, and it doesn't soak through felt. If you use super glue on felt, it soaks straight through, and if you're unlucky and it lines up wrong, it completely ruins the look. We don't want that, do we? Better get them stuck in. So having said not to drill anywhere near the red felt, I'm going to drill really near the red felt, because I've remembered that I have now got a 15mm drill bit. So, because I glued these reinforcing parts on with super glue by eye, it's just useful to drill through that, because then the pipe will fit in. By the pipe will fit in, I mean a piece of copper, 15mm copper. So that just, whenever I put the camera on, it just doesn't work. There we are. Hang on, I'm just going to drill that out a titchy little bit more. That's better. Managed to chip away a bit of the wood. Never mind, I just twirled it around a little bit. That's better. It doesn't want to be too tight because you want to get glue in there. So I can sit that like that. I can get one of my little spray painted things. 3 number 6 screws that are 5/8 of an inch long. We do like to mix metric and imperial here. And we'll just tighten, I'll try not to get in the way, but probably will. And there we are, that's nice. I forgot to mention another piece of really exciting news. If you remember, I often witter on about how I always, whenever I spray plastic, acrylic, brass paint, I always get specks of dust and things like that because I hoover it first and then put it in. I think the hoovering things, and thanks to all of you who came up with comments and suggestions, but in the end, I think I mentioned this in the last video, I bought a conductive brush, hoover brush, and it's about 33k I think, kiloohms, so it's very low resistance. Now I've added a wire to it. This is a temporary thing just to see whether it works. And the other end of the wire goes to an earth pin. I hasten to add that is an earth pin in the UK that's pushed into one of my sockets that should be earthed if it isn't risking life and limb, but it is earthed. So, and I brushed all these, hoovered these before I sprayed them, and I didn't have one single speck of paint on them. Isn't that wonderful? I've yet to try it with lots of big flat sheets, but I think this may be the way forwards. Because I reckon using the original non-conductive one, which the dog's eaten a few times, I mean basically if you think about Van de Graaff generators and Wimshurst machines and things, quite a lot of them work by rubbing an insulator against some sort of insulator or something. I don't begin to understand static electricity. It is beyond me. It makes no sense. But all I can assume is rubbing that on some plastic charges it up and then attracts all the dust to it, whereas that earths it and grounds any charge that there is. What's he going to do now, Jim? Well, I'm going to be cutting some more copper pipe, which I do like doing, because I'm going to use one of these 8mm to 15mm compression fittings as the way of getting the lovely braided rayon copper cable in, which fits perfectly. I'll show you that later. That is going to fit onto, have I done this right? Yes, that screws onto that, because the great thing about plumbing fittings, at least in the UK, are that all the threads are the same. So if I unscrew that, and I do end up with an awful lot of these, that, and this is a right angle tap connector, that will screw into there, which is nice. But now I need a little bit of copper pipe to go from there into the hole, and somewhere, hopefully, it tells me how long that needs to be. Ah, there it is, 29mm. I'm enjoying talking so much I can't stop. Another cunning plan which I've come up with recently, which is pretty obvious, if I want to cut 6 of these 29mm lengths, and I've done this in the Nempnett Thrubwell kit as well, it's really handy. I just use the calculator to write down the figures one after another, then I use the ruler, and it means that in one foul swoop I can mark out all 6, And because this cuts very, very precisely, it doesn't actually remove any material, it just sort of folds it in at as it cuts through it, shears through it. You can line one up after another. It's really handy. So here's the cut end, which is quite sharp. And here's the lovely deburring tool. I have to mention it on a regular basis. We just go round a few times and it cuts off all the burrs and rounds it off so that the cables and things can't be cut or damaged. It's one of these beautiful things with a huge handle to get a load of force on. Oh, what a joy. And you can get new bits for it as well. I think this is my second one. Now, like I was saying, this is 15mm there, 8mm here. But to stop you poking the 8mm pipe in too far, there's a little ridge around there, Chickadee Ridge. I need to drill that out because once I've put heat shrink sleeve on the copper braided cable, rayon stuff, I want it to poke right through this, sort of the outer layer, sheath shall we say, sticks right through all the metalwork to protect it against any scratches. So we'll drill that to 8. Well, I used to drill out these fittings on the lathe, which would be a right old faff, especially when you had sort of 20 or 40 to do. And I realised I could get a socket that fitted these, and a spare chuck for the lathe, just as a big heavy clamp thing, and then do it on the pillar drill. That turned a real faff of having to keep putting them into the lathe and starting and stopping into another pretty much joyful experience. It's just so efficient and effective. The other handy thing about doing it on the pillar drill is I can't actually get to the lathe at the moment. I've got so many boxes and all sorts of stuff. One day I realised I was talking far too much and explaining every thought that flickered through my head. So I just got them glued on, which is nice. And it's lovely because you know, put glue on the inside of the hole, push that in, line it up. I'm talking again, aren't I? And then just drip a load in through the back, any gaps around the back, and it all gets drawn in and makes it really nice and tight. So now we've got to the inside. If you notice, there's a number on that piece of wood, 4.1, because inevitably they all look exactly the same, these pumps, but I've got them from several different suppliers, and the schnozzles are slightly different sizes. 4.1mm in one case and 4.3 in the other, which does make a very big difference. Hence the fact, in the end, and I know I could use some sort of rubber thing, but nothing has come to mind. I got a drill bit, a 4.5mm drill bit, made a note, as you do, and ground down the side so it's slightly fluted, just sufficiently to allow for the nozzle of the pump. And that's great because the deeper I go, the bigger the hole gets. That's worked out really nicely. So what we can do then is now I need to measure and find which type of these. There's 3 of one and 3 of the other, I think. So I'll get them glued in, and then the little battery holders as well. What I mean by a little battery holder is one of these. I've just pushed that together temporarily. And again, would you Adam and Eve it? Years and years, probably 8 years I suppose, I've been buying these little 9-volt battery clips. And they've all been exactly the same dimensions and everything. Then this last time, or last year, ordered another load, and they're 0.4mm wider, 0.3mm. So all these things I've had to redesign and make them 12.2mm so that they will actually fit in. Oh, it tells you, keeps you on your toes. And there we have it. We have that battery holder clipped in, well, glued in fact, and the pipe stuck on, and they're all arranged identically. As you know, the little touch of OCD, everything has to be exactly the same. But these capacitors aren't. What am I talking about? So they're 0.1 microfarad capacitors, 2 of them, which are wired between the terminals of the motor and the middle bit on the actual body of the motor to stop interference, because my thinking was there's could be a very long bit of wire running from this to the button doorbell switch, and all of that could act as an aerial, and if some sort of lots of high, whatever, interference signals were introduced by the motor's back EMF up that long wire. It could act on an aerial, which would be annoying, hence using these. I know I use a diode with the wrong way round on other machines, but with this and the length of the wire, I thought I'd use these. In order to solder things like that onto big lumps of metal, you need a big lump of a soldering iron. Look, 75 watts of heat power at your fingertips, or hopefully not. I bought it to do some stained glass windows with, which was lovely, to solder the lead, melt the lead bits together. Anyway, it's perfect for this. Ooh, and I bought a new roll of solder. I don't know how long I had the last one for. Also half a kilogram. None of the modern unleaded stuff, because that's horrible. I've tried it in schools a couple of times and it just doesn't flow, it doesn't stick, it's horrible stuff. Whereas 60-40 lead tin is wonderful. Is that heated up? Yes. So look, you just touch that on there, run a little bit of soldering, and it is enough heat to actually stick, so to speak, onto the body of the motor. Because obviously if you use a smaller soldering iron, all the heat would immediately get sucked away. So I will get them soldered on and then get back to you. And in the blink of an eye, we have the 6 pumps fixed in. And they all fitted beautiful. So the next thing now is to get everything wired up to the motors. That's right. So I need the rayon copper coloured cable. And here it is. And isn't it beautiful? How lovely. That, by the way, is from Creative Cables online. This is the Epizoescope or whatever, something or other. Because in the end I decided to sell these with a standard 1.5 metre length, because originally I was adding each piece of cable to the customer's requirements each time, which was ridiculous, I told you. So a standard 1.5 metre length that can be added to, and then the kit comes with 2 of these, or 1 of these. And that basically is a nice little junction box. You can screw it to your wall, or you can use little sticky fixers. As always, my theory is, rather than trying to hide something like junctions, wires and things, make them bleeding obvious, because the Victorians would have done that. And here's one of the beautiful little clips, even though I say so myself. An 8mm copper saddle clip for pipes, 2 steel rivets, and a partridge in a pear tree. So it comes with 2 of those as standard, that's right. And if you order some more, that's right. So say you wanted 10 metres of wire, then it's 10 metres to take away 1.5 plus an extra junction box. That's how it works. So the first thing you do with a nice sharp scalpel is try not to cut your fingers. Oh look, it worked. You can just slide the rayon bit off, which it looks so realistic, so much like copper. I'll save these bits for a rainy day. You never know when you're going to need some copper rayon things. So that's that bit. Now I'm going to put some heat shrink sleeve on here to make it up to the 8mm that the olive will be able to crush down on. So I've got a piece of, this is 15mm across heat shrink sleeve. I've slipped it over the end. Now I'll get to my heat gun. I'll put another bit on, and then that takes it up to exactly 8mm. It's amazing, I tell you. To prove the point, here's an olive. I'll try not to burn myself because that will stay hot for quite some time. Look at that. It doesn't get much more precise than that. So once I tighten that with the nut, that'll clamp that really tightly, and the cables inside, the wires inside, will be completely protected against any scrunching up. I'll get the rest done. On the other end of the wires, I have just put a heat shrink, bared it all back, tinned the ends, get it all nice and professional like, so that they can be screwed into the little terminal block in the wooden junction box. Right, now we can get them installed in them. So poke the cable in there, leave a little bit of the heat shrink tube out, sleeve, just enough for the olive to sit on. Olives might be copper if they're more expensive fittings. You never know what you're going to get. And then about half a turn. Look at that, that's not going anywhere. I'll get them done and then I can solder all the wires onto the motor. Making this batch, I've always also realised, they sit on the edge of the table with the wires hanging down. Isn't that lovely? I can keep them all arranged symmetrically. Right, they're wired up. Here's one with some batteries I prepared earlier. I just want to check if I close these wires. Let's see. Yeah, that's the sound of the pump working. I won't put the horns on until the very last minute before they're packaged up because I just don't want to risk them getting damaged. Now all the backs are on, it's time to put the horns on. Oh my giddy aunt. I have my fabric gloves at the ready. I just push. I'm not going to film this because it will go horribly wrong. I push it in at an angle, the horn at an angle, so it's in, and then twist it around, lift it and lower it into the two cradled Munson rings, and then screw the tops on without scratching any paint. Lovely. Right, it's time to test that. And I've also remembered, would you Adam and Eve it? Look, quite clearly here, drill a 2mm hole and screw in a little M2.5 screw, like one of them, because the injection moulding sprue thing is right on the front, and that's just not cricket, I tell you. So I drill it out and replace it with a nice little brass screw, just a little decor, and that gives me another a whole huge range of opportunities to scratch and ruin the horn. So that makes it even more exciting. Failure is my watchword. Is this? Oh no, no, the pillar drill definitely. Needless to say, I ignored the instruction that said screw this in before you paint it. Right, lovely. Phew, I'm so pleased that's gone in properly. Alright, I'm going to test it one final time, put the battery in there to make sure that we have contact, so to speak. Right, there's my wires gone. Here they are, lovely. Perfect. Ooh, I want to say lovely. Very pleased with that, all symmetrical as always. But, over there, as always, I had some super glue on one of the cotton gloves. So I was trying to push this in, took it away, and I'd scratched some of the paint off the super glue had. How annoying. I resprayed it and then thought I'd waited long enough, although I was impatient, tried to put it on again and scratched some paint off in a different place. Third time lucky. How ridiculous. I think that's probably a good place to stop this video, as it's 30 minutes or something. Hope to see you next time when we're going to be making junction boxes and things. Most exciting. Thanks again for watching.